Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into an IPA from Anchorage Brewing Company. Do a lot of their beers. I absolutely love them. They're one of my favorite brewers. I always get their beers from Tavour because I do not live in Alaska. If somehow you've missed this over the last few years and all of my hundreds of reviews, Tavour is the only way, if you do not live in Alaska, you will ever be able to get your hands on Anchorage Brewing Company's beers. For my money, this single brewer alone is worth checking it out. So let's jump into today's. This is a little bit of a different direction IPA than we normally see from Anchorage. As always, very cool label art. It's got kind of like their wolf theme, cradling maybe an injured bird of some kind, in almost like a mosaic or stained glass window kind of style thing. It's hard to see. I'm hoping that the light is not glaring too badly. But this beer is called Kindness. And this one is a double dry hopped, they don't call it a milkshake style IPA, but it does have lactose in it. So 4% ABV on this one. Very, very low ABV for an IPA. This is single hop mosaic specifically. It does have lactose in it, and it also has phantasm powder in it. So if you are new to phantasm powder, haven't seen any of the IPAs, specifically from Anchorage, they're the only brewer I've got my hands on beers from that has access to this new ingredient. Phantasm powder has only been out maybe a year or two. New kind of discovery, invention of sorts, and it is this big aromatic enhancer that these Australian scientists came up with, discovered, and it's made from the skins of Sauvignon Blanc grapes. So a very interesting thing, and it's almost like how New England style IPAs focus very heavily on big aromatics and all of the different flavor compounds that can pop out of hops. Aside from the bitters, Phantasm Powder is a natural selection, especially for a New England style, because it really does enhance massively the aroma potential in the beer. And of course, you can get a lot of that naturally from dry hopping, just from whatever hop bill you use. But it's a really interesting new ingredient, and I've only found it in Anchorage's beers. So nonetheless, this one is called Kindness. Double check ABV, yep, 4%, exactly as I read. So we're going to get this cracked gently here and pour it into our nice big, tall, all-purpose glass. This one works great for mini beer styles. I love it in particular for nice pint cans of IPAs. All right, get this poured right in. It is not having a problem forming a head. 4%, so yeah, this one is pouring lighter. Looks very, very pale as I'm pouring it out. I did actually anticipate that, given that there are fewer fermentables. So yeah, this is a very bright golden yellow hue on this IPA. It does not look dissimilar to a Pilsner in the glass. If I didn't know this were an IPA, I just saw visually with a head like that and that pale shade, I would guess it's a Pilsner. But it looks absolutely stunning. In terms of effervescence and activity here, yeah, it's pretty active. It's got some super fine, slower moving champagne kind of size bubbles coming up from the middle, and it's got some kind of medium sized ones shooting off of random streams. So it did do obviously a pretty good job forming that head. That's those tighter, finer effervescent streams that are coming up that really helps with a head like that. So let's get right up on this, see what it smells like. Oh wow. That's got a lot of classic kind of IPA aromas to it. It's really big. The first thing I got off of this was a combination of melon and tropical fruit. It smells a lot like a combination of guava and mango and say like cantaloupe, honeydew. These kind of aromas coming off of this very, very clearly. And there is a little bit of an underlying kind of citrus vibe to it too, getting kind of tangerine and grapefruit mixed with this tropical fruit and melon aroma. It smells very, very nice. It's actually quite pronounced. For 4% ABV, maybe you wouldn't expect it, but it's really a big, bold, pungent aroma. It comes out very clearly. And there's actually a little bit of an earthy vibe coming off on the underneath of it too. So you get these melons, you get tropical fruit, you get some citrus, and you get this nice earthiness. So it's got a lot of these classic hallmark IPA aromas already popping out of the glass. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in, see what this one's about. Had it settled down nicely, so let's see what this is. Ooh, that's really nice. Gotta say, there's a fair bit that surprises me about this beer on first sip. Before we even, wow. Ooh, this is an interesting flavor ride, and pleasantly so. So before we even talk to what's happening flavor-wise here, let's talk texture. Let's talk weight. Body and mouthfeel. This is only 4% on an IPA. So it's basically a session, double dry hopped, milkshake-ish IPA. It's kind of its own animal here. But what I can tell you is that even though it's only 4% ABV, it has a very impressive body and mouthfeel to it. The body feels reasonably robust for 4%. I would say it's absolutely upper echelon of what I would anticipate. The mouthfeel, it's not super thick, it's not super viscous, but again, it's only 4%. I would say it feels almost akin to like a mid-range 5 to 5.5% Pilsner. So again, it's got really high-end, the upper echelon, kind of the tier where I would expect for this beer style in this ABV range. It's not a high ABV. It's not trying to be. Now, what I can tell you on the flavor profile side of things, very pleasantly surprised, interestingly so. So a lot of what you get aroma-wise does translate in the glass on this, but the first thing that I noticed was it has this bit of a mix of citrus and tropical fruit up front, which does almost taste like it smells, but that subtle kind of earthiness I got on the back was really quite prevalent on the flavor profile. And it's got an impressive amount of bittering that comes through. For something that's only 4% ABV in this beer style, it's really quite forward and present with this underlying earthiness, and that's really where the bitters are coming from. So in the flavor profile, I'm getting a good bit of citrus and tropical fruit kind of mixing in there, and I'm getting this nice kick of earthiness and kind of bitter shove from that as well. Now, again, I'm not talking, this is nothing like, say, a West Coast style IPA. It's not even attempting to do that. This is kind of its own thing. But for an IPA that has lactose in it, it definitely packs a bigger, bitter presence than I was expecting, let alone for this ABV range. It's very, very nice. I would say, in general, I really like what they did with the balance of their additives here. So the lactose and the phantasm powder. The lactose is really, I'm not sure what they used it for. It could be primarily as kind of a, give it a little extra body, a little extra presence, a little extra thickness, because that does happen in beers like this. It doesn't taste sweet at all, and there's no fruit additions, but of course you get these interesting profiles that do pop out of hops, and lactose can often help some of those underlying flavor qualities pop through and kind of taste like you think they should in your head, that little bit of added sweetness without this being sweet. Don't get me wrong. Again, I'll say it again. It doesn't taste sweet, but it does have lactose in it. And I got to think it does play some part other than just like a little bit of additional texture. But a very, very nice beer. It's got a lot bigger presence to it. It feels and presents itself as a much larger beer than it is. I mean, this is really just a session. 4%? I mean, this is almost like European shandy territory. Like sitting on a hot day on the porch and no big deal. There's your 3.5% ABV beer. I mean, this is really nice. It's got a lot more presence to it. It feels and comes off way bigger than this ABV would even let you on to believe. And I really, really like what I got. So I'm going to jump back in for a second sip. I'm going to let everything re-intensify. I'll pick apart, see if there's any flavor profiles that I mixed, talk about any interesting interweavings, and then we'll talk about the finish. But very, very nice beer. Take two. Yeah, up front, you get that citrus, you get that tropical fruit. On the second sip, I am getting some of the melon, which was the other aspect that really popped out of the aroma. Aside from that underlying earthiness, I didn't get that in the flavor profile on first sip. On second sip, I am, and it's kind of settled down a little bit. So the citrus is the most dominant, and I would say it's almost even mix between citrus and melon. At least on the second sip, that's where I got it. So like 50% sitting on the tropical fruit side, and then equal split 25-25 of melon and citrus. It's very, very nice. It's got a very nice flavor to it. And again, I'm still really impressed by how big of an underlying earthy sense comes out of this beer from these hops and this underlying bitter. And I would guess IBUs maybe subjectively to how I'm perceiving them, somewhere in the 20 to maybe 30, 35 range. It's not super bitter, but it's enough that you know that they're there. And they actually do have a good bit of a lingering effect on the palate. For me, it's kind of hitting me mid-tongue. It's not on the very back. It's not on the tip. It's kind of sitting in the mid. And that actually is kind of helping it stick around during the bulk of the flavor development and moving you into the finish. So finish-wise, it's not a silly long finish, but considering the ABV on this, how relatively dialed back this is as an IPA, it's way longer than I anticipated. So kind of everything about this beer is much bigger than I expected just based off of reading the label and seeing a 4% ABV. The aromas are bigger, the flavors are bigger, the bitter intensity is bigger, and even the length of the finish is longer. So this is almost like one of those magic beers. It's one that you could have an extra one of and not feel that guilty because the ABV is so low. But the beer drinking experience gives you like a beer that is the equivalent of almost 2 more of what this presents itself. It's really, really great. And this for me, I think would be a really nice beer on a hot day. It's got that lower ABV, it's got this bright freshness, and it's still packed full of flavor, but it's not super heavy, it's not super weighty. It's one of those Goldilocks zone beers, and I think it is absolutely delicious. For me, for what they did with this, what they put in it, how they balanced it, I love it. And I am going to take my time, sip on this one, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Anchorage Brewing Company's Kindness, a session double dry hopped, kind of sort of milkshake IPA, 4% ABV on this one. It was single hop mosaic, had added phantasm powder and lactose. Anchorage Brewing Company is of course based in Anchorage, Alaska. So this is another one of those beers in the lineup that did extremely well in most categories. Indeed, on this one, there was only one category where it did not get a perfect 10 out of 10, and that fell on the finish. Now, I kind of expected this given the lower ABV, but actually considering it was only a session style IPA, forget everything else about it. 4% ABV is not that high. This still had an impressive length on the finish. It was well above average for the ABV range and really kind of shocked me at just how big and bold and pungent, not only the aromas, of course, that phantasm powder, but also the flavors and really even the underlying bitters. It wasn't a West Coast style, but for only 4%, it really did kick through, and that actually did help drive the length of the finish out on this. So yes, well above average on the finish. It does get an 8 out of 10. And then this beer got a perfect 10 out of 10 in all remaining categories. That is aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling in the intangible, and example of style, which does bring the total score on Anchorage Brewing Company's Kindness to a 98 out of 100. So Anchorage, they're one of my absolute favorite brewers in the country. They have been very strong with many different beer styles. I've had probably, gosh, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 50 beers by Anchorage now over the last few years. And wow, they just constantly blow me away. This was another fantastic example. This I would recommend to anybody that likes really almost all styles of beer. It was just very approachable and just extremely well done. If you like session IPAs, other styles of session beers, absolutely worth your time. If you like bigger, bolder beers and certainly bigger, bolder IPAs, I still think this is worth your time just to see how well a lower ABV IPA can be done. I mean, this was absolutely incredible. I would seriously recommend this to anybody. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit the bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.